in Ukraine. And there are also disturbing reports about the use of sexual violence as a weapon of war by the Russian troops. Russia continues to target fields and food stocks. Everybody has seen the images of wheat fields being burned. They continue blocking the exports from Ukraine. They are responsible for the hunger in the world. Russia is trying to destroy Ukraine and the Ukrainian nation, and at the same time unleashing a global food and energy crisis. The ministers were unanimously agreeing on the need to continue stand firmly with Ukraine and to lend Ukraine with all our support in its fight for freedom and independence. Ukraine needs more arms. We will provide them. The war will continue. We will continue supporting. And that's why I have proposed the next tranche of the European Peace Facility, allocating 500 million more. It has been a political agreement on supporting this proposal, and the decision will be taken on the next days, but today the ministers agreed on that. We also continue our work on sanctions. A joint proposal from the Commission and the High Representative has put on the table more measures to close the loopholes and avoid that existing measures can be circumvented, adopting new measures and trying to complete the whole architecture of these sanctions. These sanctions work. The Russian economy is severely affected. Certainly, it's not going to stop the war overnight, but the consequences of the sanctions will create a lot of economic trouble to Russia. We will continue supporting Ukraine on implementing the reforms agenda on its European perspective after Ukraine has been considered and granted the status of candidate country. We will hold the Association Council on the 5th of September after the summer break, and we are working on using this Council to push the European perspective of Ukraine by implementing the required reforms. We have been discussing about the battle of narrative around who is guilty of what, and which are the causes and the consequences of the war, and about the reasons of the high increase of prices. It's clear, for example, in the case of oil, that it's not the European ban on oil, on Russian oil, who has created this increase on oil price. Many people say that. Many people consider that on adopting sanctions, the European Union has created a problem, provoking an increase on the price of oil. That's completely false. The price of oil started increasing 1 month before the war. It was caused by the war. It has been peak since the beginning of the war. And since we adopted sanctions, and since we banned the oil export from Russia, as you can see, the price of oil has decreased, reaching today the same level that just before the war started. I'm not saying that the bans on Russian oil has produced a decrease. No. But it's clear that watching at this graph, nothing can seriously say that the sanctions have produced an increase on the price of oil. With something, they have produced a decrease until reaching the same price that before the war. And this is part of the battle of narrative. A lot of people are saying things without putting evidence. And I think that behind each argument, it has to be a figure. It has to be an evidence, because otherwise, everybody can say whatever they want without having to provide the necessary proof that supports their argument. Then we want to discuss the relation with Latin America and the Caribbean. These countries are also affected by the negative consequences of Putin's war, in particular, once again, rising prices on global shortages of food, fertilizers, and energy, even if this region is one of the biggest producers of food in the world. The Latin American and Caribbean region is an important partner for a very important number of reasons, and we agreed to step up what we can call the other transatlantic relationship. Because when we talk about the transatlantic relationship, everybody thinks about the relationship with the US. There is another transatlantic relation, which is the relationship with Latin America and the Caribbean. The most important issues in which we have to invest more is to deblock the trade and association agreements with Mexico and Chile, in particular with Mexico, which is pending since the last 4 years. Member States strongly request to deblock this association and trade agreement. In fact, it's not a new association, it's just the modernization of an agreement that was signed 20 years ago. Same thing about Chile, although Chile is facing a referendum on its constitution in September. Let's hope that immediately after we can proceed to the signature of the modernization of the association and trade agreement with Chile. We agreed to hold a foreign ministers meeting during the Argentinian pro tempore presidency of CELAC in October in Buenos Aires. It will be an excellent opportunity to reinforce our partnership and to prepare a summit between the European Union and Latin American and Caribbean region during the Spanish presidency in the second half of next year. Going to a more structural issue, we discussed about digital diplomacy and adopted an important conclusion on this topic. We are essentially launching our EU digital diplomacy as yet another foreign policy to support our geopolitical role and our ambitions in the global technological power game. Because digital issues are no longer just a matter of engineers, no longer technical matters, they are the battleground of technology, of values and narrative. The conclusions of this digital diplomacy will spell out in great detail what we mean in our participation in this technological battle. And in order to engage on that, we will open a dedicated European Union office in San Francisco, in the US, to enhance our digital diplomacy in and with the US. Going back to geographical issues, the ministers exchanged on the resumption of the Association Council meetings with Israel. They agreed that the Association Council is the highest forum for our bilateral relations. This Association Council has not met since 2012. The position of the European Union has not changed with respect to the Middle East peace process. We continue with the same Council conclusion of 2016, supporting the two-state solution. We know that the situation in the ground in the Palestinian territories is deteriorating, and I think that, and the ministers agreed, that this Association Council would be a good occasion to engage with Israel about these issues. The date will be agreed mutually with Israel, but first the European Union member states have to start working and to determine a common European Union position, as with any Association Council meeting. We also adopted conclusions on foreign information manipulation and interference, something very much related with our digital diplomacy. we see more and more how Russia is using disinformation and information manipulation. One example is that the cause of the price increase on oil is due to the EU sanctions, which you can see is not true at all. And this manipulation information is a strategic tool for Russia on its aggression against Ukraine. On energy and on food security, the Kremlin tries to target a coordinated action to manipulate the information environment, and this is a challenge for our security, our democracy, and our foreign policy. We agreed to start working on a toolbox that could allow us to impose costs for those who are trying to undermine our democracy, institutions, and processes through disinformation. Going back to geographical issues, we discussed about developments in Tunisia, especially in the run-up of the constitutional referendum on the next 25th of July. We touched upon the situation in Sri Lanka and about several issues related with the situation in East Congo and other parts of the world on any other business, where several member states already put on the agenda of September many issues which maybe during the summer will become worse, but that in any case will be our agenda for the next autumn. But as you can imagine, everybody is worried about what can happen in the Ukrainian front, on the military side and on the energy side. The Nord Stream 1 is still on repair. Let's see what's happening when this period reaches an end, and we will continue watching at the situation of gas supply, which is certainly the most important concern for our societies and economies.
Thank you. Now space for your questions. The first hand I've seen was here. Mira, you can go ahead. The microphones are on the right and on the left side for those of you who will ask afterwards. Y nosotros tenemos también interpretación española, pues se puede preguntar en español si quiere.
Perfecto, gracias. Señor Borrell, buenas tardes. Ya. Una pregunta con 3 puntos. Uno, ¿qué exactamente es lo que hay que desbloquear con los acuerdos México, Chile y quizás un poco más tarde con Mercosur? 2, ¿este anuncio de una posible cumbre significa que las tensiones políticas que hicieron imposible una cumbre por 7 años van desapareciendo? Y 3, ¿qué es lo que proponen concretamente en esta hoja de ruta hacia el 2023? Gracias.
Tardaría mucho tiempo en contestar concretamente y detalladamente a sus preguntas, que no son una, sino 3. No podemos poner en el mismo nivel de complejidad la modernización del acuerdo comercial con México o la modernización del acuerdo de asociación con Chile o Mercosur. En los 2 primeros casos estamos hablando de poner al día acuerdos que llevan 20 años funcionando y que han funcionado muy bien, pero hay que adaptarlos a las especiales circunstancias. Hace 20 años las cosas eran distintas. Con Mercosur, en cambio, estamos hablando de un acuerdo nuevo que no existe, que afecta a varios países a la vez, no solo a uno, no es una relación bilateral, y que tiene complicaciones evidentes desde el punto de vista de las consideraciones de tipo ambiental. Vamos a concentrarnos en intentar empezar el proceso de ratificación del acuerdo con México. Es posible que algún país tuviese todavía alguna precaución al respecto, pero nadie ha planteado hoy nada que permitiese creer que todavía hay la más mínima objeción por parte de los Estados miembros y, por lo tanto, estamos solamente ante un problema de tipo procedimental sobre de qué manera pasar a ratificar este acuerdo. En el caso de Chile, pero las cuestiones procedimentales no pueden demorar por más tiempo este proceso. Con respecto a Chile, la situación es distinta, porque Chile va a celebrar un referéndum constitucional el próximo mes de septiembre y todo está pendiente de esta cita con los ciudadanos. Tendremos que esperar a que eso ocurra para retomar algo que debería también estar acabado antes de fin de año, porque este año vamos a celebrar los 20 años del acuerdo que ahora tratamos de modernizar. Y con respecto a Mercosur, como le digo, la cuestión es más complicada en la medida en que hay que adaptar el acuerdo al que se llegó en el 2019, incorporando preocupaciones de tipo ambiental, para lo cual hace falta un trabajo técnico muy importante. No pretenderá que le resuma en pocas palabras toda la estrategia a través de la cual pretendemos desarrollar más y mejor nuestro partenariado con América Latina y el Caribe, que no es un solo país, es un continente. Pero está claro que desde hace años China está teniendo un papel muy importante en la región. China ya es el principal socio comercial de la mayor parte de los países de América Latina y del Caribe. Y los europeos tenemos que tomar conciencia de que hay vacíos que se llenan, que nuestra presencia tiene que ser más intensa, lo es en términos de inversión y no lo es tanto en términos políticos. Pero hoy los ministros han acordado que esta situación hay que revertirla y en lo que se refiere a la transformación digital, a la lucha contra el cambio climático, a la lucha contra la desigualdad y todos los problemas que afectan hoy al crecimiento económico de la región más desigual del mundo, Europa tiene que estar presente. Y yo personalmente le aseguro que haré todo lo posible para que así sea.
Here, please, you can use the mic on the right or on the left.
Hi, my name is Olena Abramovich. I'm a Ukrainian journalist. I work for Ukrainian media. High Representative, my question is, what is the, by assessment of European Commission, worst case scenario if Russia cuts off gas for European countries? What will be the biggest consequences for European consumers and economies? And the follow-up question after that is that, does that overweight those losses of lives and ruins that Ukrainians are suffering right now? Thank you.
You cannot put on the same level the losses of human life on the destruction that Ukraine is suffering. That's why we are engaged with Ukraine with all our capacity, providing military support, economic support, sanctioning against Russia, financial support in order to avoid a big crisis of the Ukrainian economy facing the challenges of the war. On the energy side, on Wednesday, the European Commission will meet in order to discuss the situation and to take measures to prevent any possible scenario. I don't want to call for the bad times, but certainly we have to be vigilant because nobody knows what can happen this summer.
So,
speak loudly.
Yes, if Russia cuts off is European Union countries, are they ready for that? I mean, is this kind of disaster for the economy, or you have enough backup plans? It's interesting just to understand the situation, why those gas sanctions are not possible right now.
Nobody's talking about new sanctions. We are just talking about how can we face a situation in which the gas supply from Russia can be abruptly decreased. And we will be prepared for that. Certainly it's not going to be an easy scenario, but we should be prepared for that.
Thank you. La question suivante, Christiane, vous avez demandé.
Oui, bonjour. En fait, l'argent est le nerf de la guerre. Et j'aimerais comprendre, avec toutes les annonces que vous faites aujourd'hui, comment vous allez faire alors que l'argent manque. Vous avez débloqué une nouvelle tranche de 500 millions pour la facilité européenne de paix et on sait que maintenant elle est en train d'arriver à son terme. Je voudrais savoir si vous avez eu un débat. Est-ce qu'on va remettre de l'argent au pot? Est-ce qu'on va trouver de nouvelles sources de financement? Est-ce que certains États membres vont accepter de ne pas se faire rembourser? Est-ce qu'on va créer une Europe à deux vitesses entre ceux qui livrent des armes de façon tout à fait spontanée, volontaire, et ceux qui réclament de se faire rembourser jusqu'au dernier denier? Et la deuxième question, elle vaut également sur l'aide macroéconomique. Si j'ai bien compris, le budget européen ne pouvait pas financer, ne pouvait pas garantir plus que 1 milliard, ce qui a été fait. Aujourd'hui, on a 8 milliards en suspens et on est en train de demander aux États membres de mettre la main à la poche. Les Allemands ont mis la main à la poche, ils ont mis 1 milliard. Est-ce que d'autres États membres ont annoncé des choses similaires? Et est-ce qu'on peut accepter que des États membres viennent le matin, ici, à ce Conseil, et dire les Américains font plus que nous? Merci.
Bon, écoutez, on vient d'accorder 500 millions de plus. Oui, on vient d'accorder 500 millions de plus. Et vous me demandez qu'est-ce qu'il va être la prochaine étape. La prochaine étape, c'est dépenser ces 500 millions de plus. Et si on arrive à les dépenser, on verra bien. Personne ne s'est opposé. On est arrivé à un accord pour la manière de rembourser les frais pour la deuxième, troisième et quatrième tranche. Cet accord manquait, donc on ne pouvait pas faire le remboursement. On est arrivé à cet accord-là. Les États membres, tous coopèrent. Tout le monde, de façon unanime, a dit oui, mettons 500 millions de plus. Évidemment, l'European Peace Facility n'est pas infini, il a des ressources limitées. Mais pour l'instant, on peut continuer à financer l'effort de guerre de l'Ukraine. Donc, on ne dit pas l'argent manque. Du point de vue de l'European Peace Facility, il ne manque pas. Du point de vue de la macroeconomic assistance, oui, la Commission avait annoncé 9 milliards. Pour l'instant, on est arrivé à un accord au sein du Conseil pour débourser 1 milliard et on continue à travailler pour débourser les autres 8 milliards. Je ne peux pas vous annoncer une date, mais c'est toujours dans l'agenda et on va le faire. On va le faire parce qu'on est bien conscient du problème macroéconomique auquel il fait face l'Ukraine. C'est normal. Il est en guerre, ses ressources se sont effondrées, il a des difficultés budgétaires, on les a en temps de paix, imaginez-vous en temps de guerre. Et l'aide macrofinancière pour stabiliser l'Ukraine est aussi importante que l'aide militaire.
Merci. Next question, Andrés, yeah, go ahead.
Sí, muchas gracias. Andrés Gil, del diario.es. Quería preguntarle, señor alto representante, si... bueno, están hablando de la batalla por la narrativa, de la crisis energética y de la crisis de alimentos, pero lo cierto es que hay crisis energética y crisis de alimentos, hay mucha inflación, se prevé una desaceleración de la economía europea para final del curso. Y la pregunta es si ustedes cuánto creen o si creen que la población europea, cuánto tiempo puede aguantar este estrés, cuando además también precisamente la inflación o los problemas para llenar la gasolina son de las familias más vulnerables. Y los gobiernos asimismo, ¿cuánto podrán aguantar la presión de esa ciudadanía descontenta porque no puede pagar la luz, porque llega el invierno y no va a poder calentarse, etcétera, etcétera? Quería saber si esa reflexión ustedes la están haciendo y a dónde puede conducir. Gracias.
Naturalmente, todo responsable político tiene que hacer frente a consideraciones como las que usted ha hecho. Pero este es un Consejo de Ministros de Asuntos Exteriores. Este es un Consejo que define la política exterior y toma decisiones de política exterior con respecto a la guerra en Ucrania, utilizando los mecanismos que están a nuestro alcance. Naturalmente que hay un incremento de los precios de la energía. Este gráfico lo demuestra. Desde el mes de enero a ahora, claro que los hay. Y de los productos alimentarios, claro que los hay. ¿Cómo no los va a haber? Si hay 20 millones de toneladas de trigo que no llegan a los mercados, es evidente que los mercados van a reaccionar al alza. Pero esas son consecuencias de la guerra. Las guerras tienen estas consecuencias. Afortunadamente nosotros no sufrimos bombardeos como los ucranianos, ni tenemos que exiliarnos de nuestras casas. Pero sí, el mundo entero sufre las consecuencias de una guerra y de las políticas que Putin está usando para acompañar esta guerra. La guerra se hace con armas de fuego en el territorio donde la guerra tiene lugar y también se hace bloqueando el acceso de los alimentos a los mercados. La sociedad europea tiene que ser consciente de que esta es una prueba de resistencia. Y nosotros tenemos que tener la resistencia suficiente para seguir apoyando a Ucrania. No tenemos otra solución. Ellos tampoco.
Thank you. We go to the virtual space now to colleagues connected over Zoom. The first one I've seen was Lawrence. Lawrence, you can ask your question. Your mic should be open. It's open now.
Hi, thanks a lot. Thank you. Hi, Rep. I have a couple of questions. First of all, you were you spoke very strongly this morning, Hi, Rep, about people criticizing the sanctions. And I noticed you also had your blog yesterday calling for strategic patience. I wondered why the timing of this and to what extent you are worried that it's not just Viktor Orban now who is hesitating over sanctions and support for Ukraine, and whether you're worried that there is a broader European wobble on this issue. Second question to you on the Association Council. I noted you said there is no date, but my understanding is the intention is to do this before the Israeli elections on November the 1st. Is that your understanding as well? Thanks.
Yes, about the Association Council, one could consider that being the Israeli government a caretaker government, because they will be in the midst of an electoral process, it would be better to wait for another government that come out of the electoral process with a stronger political support. But member states and ministers almost unanimously decided that if we are able to agree on a common agenda and on a common position on the points of agenda, there was no need to wait until December or who knows when, because who knows when the next Israeli government will be formed. It's maybe 6 months or 1 year, no? Who knows? So the important thing is not the electoral process. That certainly is going to happen, and nobody knows which is going to be the result, and we don't want to interfere on the result. But the member states agreeing on the agenda and a common position on the agenda points. And on that, there is nothing different with other association councils. In all association councils, the European Union speaks with a single voice, saying the same. And now, from now on, we start with the process of building this common position. And I think it would be a good occasion to rethink about the Middle East peace process and the role and the position of the European Union with respect to it. As soon as we have a common position, we will try to agree with the Israeli side for a date. Not before. It wouldn't make sense to fix a date and afterwards to look for a common position. First thing first. First common position. Secondly, to fix the date. Your first question, certainly, I am sure Putin is counting on the democratic fatigue. I'm sure. He believes that democracies are weak, and the news hides the news. And look, no, the European societies cannot afford fatigue. The European societies and the European Union member states governments have to continue standing behind the decisions they have taken. They took the decisions on restrictive measures on the Russian economy, and they have to stick to it. And they have to keep putting pressure on the economics of Russia, knowing that it's not going to be a miracle solution. But we have to do that exactly at the same level that we support military Ukraine.
Okay, thank you. And the last question, Natalia, is you have the mic just there.
much for the question. I just wanted to follow up on the new sanctions measures that were discussed today. I understand that there are some exemptions for banks and other sanctioned entities when it comes to food and grain transactions. Can you explain a bit about why this was included in the new sanctions proposal and what impact that this should have on the growing food crisis?
The COREPER is working right now to complete the work on the new, call it restrictive measures, new package of adaptation or perfectionation of the existing measures. There is nothing new on changing the current restrictive measures with respect to the payments for food and fertilizers. Since the beginning, food and fertilizers were completely out of our package. No restrictive measures affecting the trade on food and fertilizers. It's perfectly possible for us that Russia sells and people buy food and fertilizers. No restrictive measures, no limit on the banking capacity to convey payments. If there are over-compliances, if there are market avoidances by some economic and financial actors, we are trying to explain to them that there is nothing in our restrictive measures that prevent from exporting and paying for food and fertilizers exports.
That was it for today. HRVP still has full agenda, so thank you very much for coming. Thank you to the interpreters, and if possible, have a nice summer. See you in Prague.